The time is now. And you may ask yourself, why debate? Because people think that debate is divisive, but really it's quite the opposite. Debate encourages us to have important conversations, difficult conversations that can create understanding between us all. As a teacher, I want to use education to foster community and teach my children to be agents of change. Because like you said, we've come a long way, but we definitely have a long way to go. But my mentor once told me that a brave voice will always stand out in the crowd. And I'm so excited because there are brave voices around the world that's standing up against injustice. And you're going to hear two brave voices today. You're going to hear a debate about whether convicted felons should have the right to vote. We're going to, Maya Boyd from Carver and Michaela McDonald from Lamp will be arguing this. And as they debate this issue, I encourage you to let your voice be heard. Now, that may be through protest, it may be through teaching, but I need you to know that it has to be through voting. There are thousands of people in America right now, American citizens whose voices cannot be heard, whose voices are suppressed. So today we're going to talk about how we can restore those voices. As they speak, I want to encourage you to please encourage our students, inspire them. I want you to comment down below and let us know what you think. It is a community debate, so we want to make sure that we hear from you. And also, we know that a pandemic is going on, and so many people have been touched through this pandemic. We want to let the community know that we're here for you. So we are going to give some cash prizes to 4 of our comments. So we want to encourage you to please comment, and we're going to randomly pick some comments and send out some cash just to let you all know that we're here for you, that Destiny Driven is here for everyone during this pandemic. And we're so excited to have you here today to talk about this important event. So without any further ado, let's debate. I'm going to ask that if you are on the live call to please mute your computers. And now I'm going to ask that Michaela and Maya will unmute your computer and also let them see your beautiful faces. And I'm going to go ahead and give it to Chris Colvin, who's going to judge this debate. Again, the debate is on voter restoration. Should convicted felons have the right to vote? And we want to hear from you. Make sure that you like and comment down below. Go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you, Chris.
Chris, before you jump in, I just want to say, if everybody could please mute their phone. What happens is if you talk while they're talking, the screen will shift to you. So Mr. William, Annie, whoever's got the 917 number, if you guys could just mute your phones. Miss Jennifer, that'd be great for the young folks. And then also know that a debate doesn't mean that they believe the side. They have to argue both sides. And I'll let Mr. Colvin talk about that. So I don't want anybody to just tune in and be like, oh, what are they talking about? So go ahead, Mr. Colvin, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kirkwood. I appreciate that. That's exactly right. Crystal said it best. Debate is not about being divisive. It presents us both sides so we can hear the arguments that are on both sides, that people, whether they believe or not, there are these arguments out there. And the only way that we can really move dialogue along is to have dialogue challenged. And in debate, we get to do that. And I've watched Michaela and Maya both in rounds earlier this year. So I'm really excited to hear what you guys have come up with. The format is very simple. We'll start with the affirmative, which is that convicted felons should have the right to vote. And that'll be Michaela, I believe, starting us off, followed by a speech from Maya. Then Michaela will have an opportunity to respond. And then Maya will have an opportunity to respond as well. And as Mr. Kirkwood said, these are sides they've been given, sides they haven't had to choose. And it's always harder to defend the side that you don't believe in with equal passion. And so we appreciate both of you ladies willing to come out and do this. I'm terribly excited. I can't wait. Are you guys ready? You ready, Michaela?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. Take it away.
Imagine serving a 30-year sentence around the time of an election. You see someone who can do great things for your community, and you want to vote for them. You've served your sentence, are married, can see your kids, are off of probation, yet Something is stopping you, sadly. The right to vote. Convicted felons should have the right to vote. According to criminal.findlaw.com, a felony is a crime, typically one involving violence, regarded as more serious than a misdemeanor, and usually punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year or death. Felons should be allowed to vote for a number of reasons. First, felons are allowed the same basic rights guaranteed to all Americans: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Felons are allowed to purchase alcohol, marry, have children, own property, and drive. If we can trust felons to do these things, complete their sentence, and return to society having received punishment for their felon, then we should be able to trust their judgment on important things, such as voting, unless deemed mentally incompetent by their state. Second, denying felons the right to vote disproportionately disenfranchises African Americans. According to ACLU.org, African Americans are more than 4 times as likely to lose their voting rights than the rest of the adult population. 1 out of every 13 Black adults are disenfranchised. 38% of those who are disenfranchised in America are Black. For example, the Alabama Constitution of 1901 implemented the use of secret ballots, also known as literacy tests, ballot stuffing, and the establishment of laws that promoted white supremacy. Requirements to vote included the following: 21 years of age, male, resident of the state for 2 years, have paid poll tax from 1901 and years forward, male, be literate of the United States Constitution, be employed for the past year, and be the owner of 40 acres of property or more, valued at $300 or more. These laws disenfranchise Blacks as well as poor white men. In addition, Section 182 disqualified individuals convicted of a variety of minor crimes, such as vagrancy, as well as those alleged to have moral failings or mental deficiencies. In 2017, Governor Kay Ivey signed a law that restored voting rights to many with previous felony convictions, affecting close to 60,000 Alabamians. Despite the gravity of the change, Secretary of State John Merrill refused to publicize the new policy or inform people who had been re-enfranchised. With the law not being publicized, many people, not just Black, were not aware of their restored privilege to vote. Thank you.
We get the
Awesome job, Michaela.
Thank you.
Okay. That was excellent. Okay, Maya, we're ready for your constructive.
This speech is for debate purposes only. I do not agree with this point of view. If you can't follow laws, you shouldn't help make them. Some may argue that felony disenfranchisement is about race. However, the government has stepped in and withheld citizens' right to vote for many reasons other than criminal. We don't let children vote, non-citizens, or the mentally incompetent. Why? Because we don't trust their decision-making skills. So why should we trust felons who have already proven themselves to have poor decision-making skills in reference to the law? Do you think we should allow ex-felons to vote so they can choose what law or president that benefits them or their behavior? Think about this. If there was a law to lessen the sentence of a crime because it was too harsh, would you want rapists, murderers, abusers, stalkers, kidnappers, terrorists, etc.? Would you want them to have a say-so in enacting a law that will reduce their punishment so they can get out of jail and continue their rampage? If you won't follow the law yourself, then you shouldn't be allowed to help make the law for everyone else. If you believe felons should be able to have the right to vote, then why not give domestic violence offenders the right to bear arms and terrorists the right to serve jury duty? A U.S. Sentencing Commission report among federal prisoners released on January 24, 2019, showed that nearly 64% of prisoners who had been convicted of violent offenses and released were arrested again within 8 years, compared to 40% of those convicted of nonviolent offenses. Overall, almost 45% of former prisoners were arrested within 1 year of release. Thus, about 68% were arrested within 3 years. Kevin Coe, Ted Bundy, Harold Shipman are well-known serial killers, rapists, and kidnappers. Harold Shipman massacred over 265 people in 23 years. Ted Bundy was going state to state, killing, kidnapping, and raping people for 4 years. Before his execution, he admitted he killed 30 people. Kevin Coe raped numerous victims, which are to believe it is over 43. Would you want these people to have a decision in the laws Would you want these people to have a decision in the laws that govern your future? In conclusion, I do not think that convicted ex-felons should be allowed to vote, but as soon as they are released, they can request restoration of their voting rights, then wait 3 years to make sure they don't reoffend again. Once that process is completed, they can have their rights restored. Thank you for your time.
Awesome job, sweetheart.
Go ahead, girl.
All right, our response to the negative will be Michaela's turn.
I'm giving my rebuttals, correct? Okay. So in your speech, you stated that the recidivism was 45% and 60% within 1 to 3 years. So do you agree that the other percent should suffer, those who don't align within the recidivism mark? Do you agree that 100% of felons should not have their vote, should wait 3 years just to have their right to vote restored?
No, I do. Yes, I do think that because, I'm sorry. Yes, because the justice system isn't perfect, but it's designed to protect citizens. So yes, I would let that other percent stay in prison just so the other 68% wouldn't go out and continue, like I said, continue their rampage and killing people and murdering or whatever what they've been doing.
You said that the justice system isn't perfect and that it works for, and basically, so I'm sorry. You said that the justice system isn't perfect, but you have the obvious denial and disenfranchisement of African Americans. So how does the justice system not be perfect, but work to protect its citizens, but disenfranchise and exclude Black adults from voting?
Well, African Americans, they are the one committing the crime. So it isn't the government's fault that they are the ones are not being allowed to vote.
But what would you have to say to those who are in jail for example, wrong crimes? What would you have to say to those who might not necessarily be in jail for the wrong thing? Because you did say that the justice system is not perfect.
Exactly, it isn't perfect. So it isn't perfect. So that's why they aren't allowed. Sorry. No, that isn't why they are allowed to vote. Nothing is perfect, so we can't base it off of that.
But just because I'm not saying that the justice system should be completely perfect, but at the same time, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our Pledge of Allegiance states liberty and justice for all. So why should a system that does not grant liberty and justice for all, on top of that, not grant justice and liberty for all, but also disenfranchise and exclude people who are the same American citizens just as their fellow neighbors?
But we are trying to keep these criminals inside, not necessarily inside of prison, but we're trying to keep them for voting. We're not trusting their decision-making skills. We aren't trusting them. Why should we let them out? Why would she let, like I said, Kevin Coe, why would we let him out again to commit murders?
I'm sorry.
You can go. I'm done.
Okay. In your argument, you're talking about murderers and rapists, but a felony can be punished for more than 1 year or punishable to death. So what would you have to say to those who only receive 1 year of punishment? Should they be in the same category and have to wait the same amount of time just because you feel that a murderer should not be able to vote at the same amount of time that a person who may have gotten a speeding ticket should not have?
Well, I did say that once they are released, that they can request restoration of their voting rights. I didn't say that they completely had their voting rights stripped away from them once they were out of prison.
But that's only in some states. I mean, if you look at certain states, you have to, after you do request restoration, sometimes people don't know that they do have the right and privilege to vote. I mean, we look at our own state, Alabama. The Secretary of State, John Merrill, refused to publicize the new policy or inform people. So you have close to 60,000 people in Alabama who don't know that they have the right to vote after they're ex-felons.
If they wanted their right to vote, they would go try to get their rights restored. They can go, if they went to go vote, they would learn that they weren't able to vote. Then they can go get their rights restored.
But what would you have to say to those who, especially with the racism and the oppression of a race that's going on, what would you have to say to those who want their rights restored, but because, like in your argument, you said the justice system is not perfect. What would you have to say to those who want their rights restored, but because the justice system is not perfect, is refusing or is delaying their right to vote?
What do you mean by delaying their right to vote?
I'm saying after they were to request restoration, with all of the racism and things that are going on now, or if, say, for example, you didn't know that you had the right to vote, because the justice system isn't perfect and because it takes time for people to regain things and regain rights once they're not inducted, but welcome back into society. What would you have to say to those who know that who have requested, but are constantly being told or their trial is being delayed, or the papers or what so have you are being delayed just because they are a felon or just because of racism, because the system is not perfect?
It isn't perfect. The fact that a disproportionate number of felons, as I said, at some point is in time belong to a particular racial group does not make the disenfranchisement racist.
It could, honestly, because what would you have to say to those who are in there for crimes that they did not commit?
What do you mean? You talking about in order for them to vote?
Mm-hmm. If you're in jail, I'm saying, like, for example, if you're in jail for a certain period of time, and because the system isn't perfect, these people did not give you a fair trial. I mean, we look at in the movie Just Mercy. Imagine being on death row for a good number of years, and then once you're at this older age, you have to wait 3 more years just to have the right to vote.
As I said before, I cannot speak on that. The justice system, it isn't perfect. There are a lot of people who are wrongfully accused, but we're not about to let a person who's actually committed a murder to go out and continue what they're doing just to have other people to have their right to vote. You're putting people in harm's way.
Great. That's going to be time. There's going to be time for Michaela. We want to give Maya, we want to give you an opportunity to respond. You were responding, but also give you an opportunity to ask questions as well. I'm sure you might have a few related to Michaela's case.
Maya, do you need any prep time?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, Michaela, in your speech, you stated that once felons are released from prison, that they are able to drive, they can purchase, they can own property, they can drink alcohol. You was like, since they can do that, then we should restore their rights to vote. So just because they can drink alcohol and drive, why would we base that to trust them in voting, voting?
Well, when you're in jail, driving, drinking alcohol, things that I mentioned, those are taken away. So if those can be restored in the same amount of time, I feel that those should be restored in the same amount of time that voting, a chance and a time to voice your opinion, to have an impact, no matter how big or small you think it is, on your community actually does matter.
But drinking isn't the equivalent of having your right to vote, to choose your president, to dedicate our future. That's not the same equivalent.
How is it not? I mean, alcohol, as literally determined in the Alabama driver's license manual, is a depressant that slows your reflexes. So if we can trust someone to get drunk on a Saturday evening, I'm sure we can trust them to walk to the voting polls, voice their opinion, and have an impact on their society.
Okay. You also stated that voting is a privilege and a right. So since it's a privilege and a right, those are getting taken away from them. while they are in prison. If they wanted their privilege to vote, then they can, as you said, request restoration. So my question is, why should we let them vote when they lost their privilege?
But just the privilege to, like I said in my argument, marry, the privilege and the right of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, the privilege of alcohol, the privilege of being with your family again, the privilege of, going to a baseball game, just doing every other day things that normal, that other people who haven't committed crimes have done, that should be in the same category and allow felons the right to vote.
Having someone voting, that's like putting your life in their hands. I wouldn't want a murderer or somebody. I wouldn't want my life in their hands. They're voting for our future. What if there's somebody they're voting for their benefit? Like I stated in my speech, people, would you want a rapist or somebody to vote for a president that might lessen their time?
Well, just because they're voting someone does not mean that person who they're voting for is going to win. I mean, everyone in this country has a right to their opinion, and voting is the one way that we can voice our opinions.
But would you take that chance?
Yes, I would, because everyone deserves second chances. I mean, in your argument, you stated that 45% reoffend within 1 year and 60% reoffend in 3. But what about the other 50%, the other 55%, and the other 40% that may realize, okay, what I did was wrong. Let me try and be a better impact to my society.
But they knew it was wrong when they committed the crime. So they shouldn't have a say-so in our future, in the laws that we have.
Not necessarily. I mean, they should have a say-so just because they committed one mistake or did something wrong, but they may have not known was wrong, or they could be put in jail for the wrong thing, does not mean that they should be denied their right to vote or have to wait 3 years to voice their opinion.
But you keep talking about the people who were wrongfully accused, but what about the people who actually committed these horrible crimes? Like, you're putting your life in their hands, you're putting our government in their hands, like you're letting them choose our future.
I'm not letting them choose our future and putting my life in their hands. I'm giving them the opportunity to voice their opinion that could affect, keyword could affect, my life.
All votes count, no matter what. All votes count. So it is not that it could affect your life. It would affect your life. It will.
Okay, that's time. That's time. Good questions. Excellent questions. At this point, we want to give each debater an opportunity to wrap up, in essence, provide a little closing to their to the debate for their side. They can use information from their original speech or that they gathered during this rebuttal cross-examination period. So Michaela, you'll have the first opportunity at this. Would you like to use some prep time?
No, I'm good.
Okay. And then Michaela, you'll follow her immediately. We'll give her 2 minutes and then give you 2 minutes as well. And like I said, you can kind of talk about any of these arguments that have been discussed. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Voting is a privilege and a right. Convicted felons should have the right to vote. Allowing felons the right to vote gives them the same basic rights guaranteed to all Americans: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We allow them to purchase alcohol, marry, have children, and drive. We should be able, if we can trust these people with certain things that affect everyone else's daily lives, just because they made one mistake, we should be able to trust their judgment for voting. Secondly, allowing felons, denying felons the right to vote, disenfranchises African Americans. 1 out of every 13 Black adults are disenfranchised. 30% of those who are disenfranchised in America are Black. We also have instituted racism and laws that encourage white supremacy. In the Alabama Constitution of 1901, use secret ballots, literacy tests, and other ways of preventing people the right to vote, a right and privilege outlined in the Constitution that cannot be taken away by states, only by federal. This is why felons should have the right to vote. And lastly, Governor Kay Ivey signed a law that restored voting rights to many people with previous convictions. And in my opinion, those should be publicized because it can affect in Alabama, it affected over 60,000 Alabamians. So that means 60,000 Alabamians do not know that they have the right to vote. For these reasons, felons should be allowed to vote. Thank you.
Okay, Maya, do you need a little preparation time?
Yes, could I get a minute and 30 seconds?
Okay.
While Maya prepares for her closing argument, I want to say that I am so proud of these young ladies. We're talking about things that sometimes we can't have civil conversations about difficult topics, but these young ladies are high school students. They've done their research and they really did an awesome job. So if you're watching, I want you to go ahead and share this because I think that more people need to see it, and go ahead and comment down below as well. And like Maya said, this isn't the side that she wants, but I'm so proud of her because she was able to debate that, like she said it, like she really meant it. And oftentimes it's hard for us to get outside of our own perspective. But when we get outside of our own perspective, it allows us to, it fosters great conversations. It allows us to come together. So I'm really proud of these students. And we're also going to go ahead and jump into, because I see some people are commenting, but I can't really see exactly who's commenting because it's coming in so fastly. So I'm going to ask Duncan if you can read a couple of comments while we wait for Maya's final argument.
Yeah, all of the comments are just, we got Crystal, Derico, Nicole Gilchrist, all saying great job, great representation, great research. Jeremiah McFadden is saying he can't wait to see when they switch sides, how they gonna argue, what it's like when they argue against their personal beliefs. We got, let me see, LaShawn Amado asking for a link for the recording. I guess he wants to share. Roger saying great job. Everybody's just saying just how amazing these young women are and how difficult it must be to argue against your beliefs. And then OT, don't let me butcher your last name, but OT asks, can the audience ask questions? We got Eric Wright on here tuned in, Alan Gibson. So we got a lot of great people from the Montgomery area, all across Alabama, all across Georgia, tuning in and supporting these young women. And just, it's all positive feedback, all wonderful debate. Somebody said that they're so impressed at how mature they are in handling these topics. So yeah, just awesome. Everybody is blown away that these young women are just doing their thing. Some people have some comments about how felons pay taxes, so they should have their rights just like everybody else. We got somebody on the chat saying they're tuning in from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Awesome.
So yeah, this is getting out there. We up to about 10 shares. We got 40 people live now, probably about close to 100 have tuned in since it started. So, these young women is on fire.
I'm excited. And I'm going to read Jeremiah's because I think this is very important. He says also it helps your own argument when you research the opposing side to the argument. So I do think that is very important. Sometimes if you can research the other side, it helps you play offense and defense. So I think that's a good point. And we're going to go ahead and do 2 giveaways. So I'm going to ask Jeremiah if you can message Destiny Driven your Cash App, and we're gonna randomly, I'm just scrolling. We're gonna ask that Nicole Gilchrist send us your Cash App as well. But we still have some more giveaways to go, so I want you to continue to comment, continue to share. And now I'm gonna go ahead and give it back to Maya. Maya, are you ready for your final argument?
Yes. Would you want me to?
Before she gets started, I just wanted you to tune in so she know who she talking to. We got somebody from Texas, Boston, South Carolina. They sending you love from every corner of the country, young ladies. So I just wanted to give you that as everybody's checking in.
Okay. Would you like for me to do my side or rebuttal her?
It's up to you. You got 2 minutes to respond how you'd like to wrap it up.
Okay, I will go ahead and do my side. I do not have a rebuttal for her speech.
Sure. No, whatever, however you'd like to finish it.
In 1985, the landmark Supreme Court case, Hunter versus Underwood, revealed the racist roots of felon disenfranchisement laws in Alabama. Persons convicted of crimes involving moral turpitude were not allowed to vote, yet African Americans were so disproportionately affected by this law, the Supreme Court struck it down, and indeed found evidence that the law was passed to intentionally exclude Blacks from the ballot. Alabama's unabashed pursuit of white supremacy through the enactment of these laws rendered them unconstitutional. What's more modern for felon disenfranchisement is often based on negative assumptions about how someone's identity, status, or past behavior will inform his or her choices in the ballot. But assumptions about the voter's viewpoint violate First Amendment principles. In a country that has the highest incarceration rate of any modern democratic nation, laws that prevent prisoners from voting also imprison our democracy. The disenfranchisement of people, felony convictions is one of the most pressing civil rights issues of our time. Thank you.
I have a question, Maya. Was that your affirmative?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. Ladies, you guys have done such an awesome job. We're going to switch sides, correct?
Yes. So that was the end of the first round. Now we're moving to the second round. Maya, you did such an awesome job, but we want you to read it again so we'll know. So now the students are switching sides. So when they're arguing, they have to argue the affirmative and the negative. So they have to do research for both sides. And Maya just did the side that she didn't like the negative. Now she's going to do the affirmative. So we're going to ask you to do the affirmative. So now we have Maya on the affirmative, Michaela on the negative. And if you don't mind, baby, read it for me one more time, okay?
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was us rebutting each other.
Yeah,
no, that's fine.
That's okay.
In 1985, the landmark Supreme Court case, Hunter versus Underwood, revealed the racist roots of felon disenfranchisement laws in Alabama. Persons convicted of crimes involving moral turpitude were not allowed to vote. Yet African Americans were so disproportionately affected by this law, the Supreme Court struck it down, and indeed found evidence that the law that was passed to intentionally exclude Blacks from the ballot. Alabama's unabashed pursuit of white supremacy through the enactment of these laws rendered them unconstitutional. What's more, modern support for felon disenfranchisement is often based on negative assumptions about how someone's identity, status, or past behavior will inform his or her choices in the ballot. But assumptions about voters' viewpoint violate First Amendment principles. In a country that has the highest incarceration rate of any modern democratic nation, laws that prevent prisoners from voting also imprison our democracy. The disenfranchisement of people with felony convictions is one of the most pressing civil rights issues of our time. Thank you.
Great job, sweetheart.
All right, Michaela, are you ready?
I'm reading my negative, correct?
Correct. It's your turn.
We have certain minimum standards of responsibility and commitment to our laws before entrusting someone with a role in the solemn enterprise of self-government. People who commit serious crimes against their fellow citizens do not qualify. The right to vote should only be restored to felons on a case-by-case basis after a person has shown that he or she has truly changed. The right to vote can be restored to felons, but it should be done carefully on a case-by-case basis after a person has shown that he or she has truly turned over a new leaf, not automatically on the day someone walks out of prison. The unfortunate truth is that most people who walk out of prison will be walking right back in. The fact that a disproportionate number of felons at some point in time belong to a particular racial group does not make disenfranchisement racist, just as most felons being male and young does not make these laws sexist or ageist. And while a disproportionate number of felons are Black, their victims likewise are disproportionately Black. So minimizing the consequences of crime and empowering criminals also has a disparate impact on their law-abiding African-American neighbors. If there are any evidence that a state's disenfranchisement law is truly discriminatory, it would be considered unconstitutional under Supreme Court rulings. The fact that it has been years since such laws have been successfully challenged in court, despite there being no shortage of organizations, started with the Obama administration's Justice Department and the Democratic Party that would be eager to do so, shows this evidence is non-existent. It's claimed that once released, felons should be reenfranchised because they have paid their debt to society. But this phrase is misleading, since in many respects, we don't ignore a criminal past. For example, in allowing someone to buy a gun. Finally, it's argued that reenfranchisement may speed the reintegration of felons into civil society. But automatic reenfranchisement actually misses the opportunity to do so. A better approach is to wait some period of time to ensure that the felon has actually turned over a new leaf. At that point, a ceremony where he is congratulated in front of friends and family and reenfranchised would be meaningful and moving. Thank you.
Great job, Michaela.
Thank you.
Okay, Maya, you have an opportunity at a rebuttal, and what we did in the last one was allow questions as well. So I'll just give you. We went about 3 minutes in the last one, so we'll give you that opportunity. Do you need any preparation time? Or are you ready?
Can I get a minute?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so while they are preparing for their rebuttals, I do want to take this time to shout out Opportunity Youth United for being on the call. We want to thank you, LaShawn, and also we want to thank our partners, the Southern Poverty Law Center, for partnering with us so that we can bring you this event. And most importantly, we want to thank everyone out there. I see some family members, some cousins, everyone's out here that's coming out. Jeremiah keeps on responding, saying great job. So I'm really excited to have you all here. And this is what Destiny Driven is all about. The students, I met Maya and Michaela, I think around September, October last year. And we just started teaching students about political awareness, teaching them about leadership, and teaching them about the importance of letting their voice be heard. So we started competing at Alabama State, and we've been competing ever since then. And they have actually won some debates, so I'm really excited. And then the pandemic came, and we were like, oh no, what are we going to do now? But I am so excited to have technology that we can continue to spread light and spread joy and information, even though we can't do it in person. So I do want to thank everyone for coming in, and we're going to continue to do this. So every other month, we're going to have a virtual debate. Next month, I think that we're going to talk about defunding the police. I think that's a hot topic, and I know our students would do really well with that. So I want to encourage you to join us when we come back next month, and also bring someone with you. So if you like what you see, go ahead and let them know that we're here in the city. We're starting debate teams all over the city. We have Michaela, from LAMP, representing LAMP, and Maya representing Carver, but we also have teams at JD, Lanier, and I definitely want you all to see them as well. So continue to support. We thank you so much for everything. And Maya, are you ready?
You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, Michaela, in your speech, you said that they have paid their debt to society. So since they paid their debt to society, why can't they get their privilege and their right to vote back?
I'm not saying that they should not get their right to vote back. I'm saying that it should be on a case-by-case basis. Would you want a murderer who murdered like 10 people just being allowed to vote and voice their opinion on someone who's on a law that could be enacted to help them and help the fact that they got out of I'm sorry. And that, hold on, let me get my thoughts together. Speaking before I can. But that they should be allowed to vote. A criminal, a person who killed 10 people, a person who raped someone's daughter. Do you think that they should have that their opinion and their right voiced again?
Okay, but you want hundreds and thousands of people who have been wrongfully accused to stay in prison, just to stay in prison and not have their right to vote, not have their freedom to vote. Would you want them to not have their freedom? Would you want them to not have their right to vote just so you can not let the murderers and everyone else have their right to vote?
The fact that it affects a certain group of people is not, whether racially or not, is not the fault of the prisoner. It's the fault of the legal system. And if that does happen, then we need to make sure that these people, hey, haven't come out of jail scarred and scared from prison or what other life experiences. We need to make sure that these people are actually sane and actually have the mental competency that they need to be able to vote.
So what you're saying is that you'd rather have wrongfully accused people you wouldn't want them to voice their opinion. You're not letting them fully have their right, their privilege.
I am, but it should be done on a case-by-case basis, as I said in my argument.
Okay, could you state the case-by-case basis, the process?
A case-by-case basis. I'm saying that we should. Okay, so say for example, most people who commit a felon, they have a probation officer. We could include in the probation officer's job description that they make sure that these people are doing what they need to do, that they make sure that these people aren't going crazy or whatever. And majority of the time, those people are more likely to reoffend anyway. So why should we take that chance and just give you the right and privilege to vote when you're likely to offend again anyway? That's a waste of time.
Okay, but if you would rather wait however many years, so basically you want them to request restoration. If you don't want them to vote at all, why give them the chance to request restoration?
I didn't say that they shouldn't have to vote at all. I'm saying that we should make sure that, number one, they're not doing the crime that they were committing or any other crime for that matter.
So basically you want the parole officer to watch over that individual and come back with the report.
Exactly. They report and watch and monitor the felon for everything else. For jobs, for things like marriage, for everything else. What's one more thing?
Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. I actually have a question for you, if you don't mind.
It's fine.
Okay, so in your speech, you talked about moral turpitude and that they weren't allowed to vote. So can you explain moral turpitude and how it denied people the right to vote?
I'm sorry. I cannot answer that question. Sorry.
Because the reason why I asked is because moral turpitude, by definition, is a legal concept in the United States and some other countries that refers to an act or behavior that gravely violates the sentiment or accepted standard of the community. So what would you have to say to those people who do feel like that these felons shouldn't be allowed to vote? Because moral turpitude says that it's a sentiment or accepted standard of the community, but people in the community have different views. For example, my viewpoint is that someone that shouldn't, but that's based on whatever we think is legal. And because the legal system, because the legal system does have its flaws, that we should make sure and instill and do everything else that we can.
Okay. If they were convicted by the jury of their peers, then those are the ones that convicted them. That's the community. They convicted them.
they convicted them, but at the same time, what would you have to say to those who, I mean, they're murderers and rapists? I mean, they're getting to voice their opinion just because it's a right and a privilege.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? You said.
I'm saying. Wait, what was
continue.
what? I'm sorry. What was your question?
Is what I was asking. What were you asking me?
Did I lose my train of thought too?
Well, if you all lost your train of thought, we do have a comment in the on Facebook that I thought was pretty good. So while you're gathering yourself, the next comment goes to OT. He says, do you think felons should pay taxes after they've been released from prison? If yes, do you think it's right for them to have their voting rights restored? And that can go to either Maya or I think it's going to Maya. So do you think felons should have the right to should pay taxes if they're not being represented and don't have the right to vote? That can go to either one of you all because I see Michaela's thinking. What you thinking?
Actually, I do think that they should, even if they aren't being represented, because once that they are out of prison, they go back to doing everything else normal. And just because they pay taxes or poll taxes, whatever type of taxes, that's what everyone else and what every other citizen in America does. And so it should, and so they should not have the right to vote either. However, because if you're doing everything, I mean, and you're blatantly disregarding the laws in the land of this country, then that shows that you should not have any type of say in the laws that are being established for the new laws that are being established for this country.
Okay, awesome. We do want to. I want to ask OT if you can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Message me.
Oh, my microphone was muted, but I was saying that yes, that they should pay taxes because they are living here. They're living in America. They're using everything that we use. Well, not everything that we use, but they're being provided for, and they should earn their right to vote because it's a privilege.
Okay, I don't want to go back and forth, but I do want to keep that in mind for when the panel gets ready to speak. And ladies are also, and I don't want to sway you at all, but remember the phrase no taxation without representation, and also remember what the Boston Tea Party was all about and see if that can be applicable to what we're talking about right now. But I don't want to prolong the hour, so we're going to go ahead and give it back to Chris. But before we do, OT, if you can message us your Cash App, because we're going to go ahead and give you a little token for your participation. I really appreciate all of the comments that you've been giving, and we still have 2 more prizes to go. So continue to comment, continue to like, continue to share. Again, we want to hear from you. Do you have anything else, Chris?
I was going to just say, are we going to give them an opportunity to wrap this debate up? I was just going to give each of them one more opportunity to speak. The cross-examination rebuttal kind of swayed. Michaela kind of got her questions in. I thought I didn't want to prolong that. I thought we'd move to the final,
yes.
to the final statements. Do y'all need a little bit of prep time or?
I don't have a final statement.
Okay. Do you want to restate anything from your first speech?
Okay.
Whenever you're ready. Okay.
I'll just restate my conclusion.
Great.
That I do not think that convicted ex-felons should be allowed to vote, but as soon as they are released, they can request restoration of their voting rights. Then wait 3 years to make sure they don't reoffend again. But once their process is completed, they can have their rights restored.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. It was my turn.
Yes, it's your turn, Michaela.
Okay. In my opinion, felons should not have the right automatically restored to vote. Number one, because they blatantly disregarded the laws and the rights of this country. And number two, because it does not necessarily just affect a racial group, it affects all as a whole. And they should wait on a case-by-case basis to see if a murderer, to see if a person who violated a speeding ticket, to see if these people are genuinely generally care and are generally sorry about the decisions that they made, and that they genuinely care and are generally sorry and want to try and reintegrate into society and do normal things that they should. Thank you.
All right, congratulations. I'm representing hands from across the nation.
Congratulations, ladies.
Thank you, guys.
Excellent, excellent,
Thank you.
excellent job. I won't prolong the discussion because you have people on this panel who are well more versed and are greater experts on this topic and actually deal in this field way more than I do. I'm just an old debate coach. But I thought you guys both did a great job of laying out the arguments for both sides. I think, and what's interesting is both of you had a lot of similar arguments that were put out there. I think in both instances, the argument about disenfranchisement on the affirmative is so relevant. I think one thing that would have been awesome, Crystal already alluded to it with taxation without representation, but also the fact that we are having protests across our nation, not just because of that are sparked by these deaths, but by the institutional bias and systemic bias that we see, that the problem with these conviction rates, and it was both of the negatives even hit on it when they said that, I believe in the very first one about who's committing most of these crimes. Well, it would have been great for the affirmatives to say that's the way it looks, but that's not the way it actually is. The way it actually is we have a systemic problem that's creating this disproportion, which then creates this disproportional vote. What we're seeing more and more is this problem, and I know our panel is going to speak to this idea that we have systemic failures over the last hundreds of years that have brought us to this point. And that's why when we talk about disproportionality, a lot of people don't understand it. I thought it was awesome that both of you, Maya and Michaela, on the affirmative spoke to that. Would like to have seen more discussion of that systemic problem. I love, Maya, I love your line that this, not allowing this is a violation of the First Amendment. You said that this imprisons our democracy. Would love to have just seen more explanation of not just how denying this person a vote imprisons our democracy, but denying this person the voice in our democracy would have really drummed that home. The idea that our democracy is built on everybody having the opportunity to present their side. I actually thought this debate, both debates really turned into more of a conversation in that the negative provided an opportunity, a pathway to reenfranchisement with this kind of 3-year waiting period. Michaela talked about a ceremony where it's given back on a case-by-case basis. I thought that was awesome. But yeah, I think if I were gonna vote, I thought Michaela asked some tough questions of you, Maya. I thought she kind of was like, man, she wasn't letting up. And so I would have leaned that way. But I think in both debates, I definitely would have leaned affirmative. I just would have needed a little more information from you on the affirmative side. I thought especially if she's going to give us a counter to what it is you're arguing. Both negatives give us a plan to reenfranchisement. I thought you could have, as the affirmative said, hey, that's exactly what I'm arguing. And I know our panel is going to talk more specifically about those plans, but incredible job, ladies, especially given the circumstances. And I'm going to turn it back to Crystal and allow these guys who know way more about it and are involved in this fight daily to kind of enlighten us a little more. Thank you so much, Crystal.
All right, thank you. And again, awesome job, ladies.
Yeah.
I think you all did amazing. So now we're going to talk about it. I want to open this up for anybody that's watching. If you have any questions about voter suppression or voter restoration, go ahead and comment, and we're going to try to answer any questions that you have. We have, like you said, some area experts on this topic, and I do want to thank you for coming in and supporting us. So I want to go ahead and I'm not going to be before you long. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have Kanisha Brown, Philip Ensler, Jason Barnes, and John Paul Taylor from the Southern Poverty Law Center. He's going to be moderating our panel. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to him. And also, John, if you would like, there are a lot of people that's giving a lot of good questions in the comments. So if I can, I'm going to try to post them. But as you go on, don't forget the people that's in the comments, because we definitely want to encourage them to comment and to join in this conversation. So if you can, if our debaters will mute their mics and turn their cameras off, and if our panelists will turn your cameras on and unmute yourselves, I'm gonna go ahead and give it to John Paul Taylor at this time.
Thank you all so much, and I'm extremely privileged to be a part of this conversation. I think we all should give a virtual clap and high five to Michaela and Maya once again, because I am a true believer in the youth will lead the way, honestly, in all of this, in not just the present, but the future also. And so we must empower them, encourage them to continue to speak their truth. Crystal, thank you so much for, and Duncan, for being advocates for our youth in not only the knowledge that they share, but the conviction that they have to make sure that we all, as citizens, especially people of color, have the opportunity to use our voice and to empower. So with this, is wonderful to kind of be leading this part of the debate or the discussion, particularly working with Southern Poverty Law Center. I am the SPLC Voting Rights Restoration Field Director, covering Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And with that coming, because these young people are in Montgomery, being part of the Alabama Voter Rights Project, where I know Mr. Jason Barnes, and we were both fellows with that project, and extremely, because of the 2017 law, many individuals got the opportunity to be re-enfranchised, right? To be empowered by that, and just starting there, and I know Kanisha, rolling with the polls is an extremely important part of what we're doing. And because one of the young ladies stated in her debate, talking about how John Muir would not disseminate that information out to the general public, I kind of like to start that debate or this discussion there with us talking about how the efforts of grassroots organizations, people directly on the ground, being able to really share and give that information where people can really understand it, right? So I would really love for you and Jason to kind of tackle that question. Some of the efforts you all have been doing in making sure that happens.
Okay. You want to go first, Kanisha? Or I can.
You can take it first, and I can come back on your end.
All right. So my name is Jason Barnes. I am the young adults chair here at the Metro Montgomery NAACP branch here in the city of Montgomery. And I am a former re-enfranchisement outreach fellow for the Alabama Voting Rights Project, which was an adjunct of the Southern Poverty Law Center Campaign Legal Center. John Paul is my former colleague, and Kanisha is my organizing big sister, as I like to call her, at Rolling to the Polls. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, I just want to congratulate both young ladies. One, they did a phenomenal job arguing the affirmative and the negative. I cannot remember which young lady brought up moral acts of turpitude, which was a really good point. I'm glad that she asked that question because it kind of all sits when we're talking about voter restoration in particular, and we're talking about moral crimes of turpitude. We really have to look at the history of the Alabama State Constitution. Back in 1901, when it was written by John B. Knox, if I'm not mistaken, who was the architect of the Alabama State Constitution, he wrote, quote, "And what is it that we plan to do? It is implement white supremacy into our Constitution." Moral acts of turpitude specifically was written into our state constitution to bar people from voting if they were incarcerated. And after that, black codes were placed into state law. And what made this so complicated, and Kanisha can kind of speak to this, and John Paul as well, is a law in Montgomery County was not the same as a law in Lowndes County. And that the person who basically determined what was a moral act of turpitude was the registrar's office. So if looking at a white woman was against the law in Montgomery County, looking at a white man was against the law in Lowndes County, you were screwed both ways. And you were immediately sent to prison and you lost your voting right for life. And so with 2017 coming this new law, with defining the moral acts of turpitude, the problem that came with that obviously was our Secretary of State does not find it resource friendly and logical to inform the tens of thousands of people across our state, majority of them disproportionately being African American, that they have access to voting rights. Many of them are told when they go in what they can't do anymore, but when they get out, they're not told what they can do. And a lot of people actually have non-disqualifying convictions and can register to vote immediately. But when you're not given that information, you're clearly like X'd out of participating in our, governmental systems. And furthermore, on top of that, I think what's really interesting is our state government does very little. They do very good at doing very little, and they're very intentional in that. And we have to be able to call that out. They understand that when oppressed people, especially people with felony convictions who are already paying taxes, are activated and are able to vote, and a lot of these close local elections, that the stranglehold that these people have in these certain positions would be eradicated from these positions and essentially, X'd out from the process when these people are given power. And that's why they're working so hard to make sure that they can't vote. I'll let Kanisha take over.
And yes, I just want to kind of mirror everything that you just said. What we've noticed on the ground is that there is a void in those who have, by chance made a mistake and they just really want to get reacclimated into society. They just want a second chance. They just want to be considered a normal citizen. Yet they have this barring of, being considered a citizen because they don't have that chance to vote. And like what Jason just said, when the moral turpitude law was put into place back in 2017, that was good news. It eased some of the restrictions of what it takes to get your voting rights restored. Yet a lot of people did not know about it. And believe it or not, in 2020, a lot of people still don't know about it. It's still a lot of people that we talk to on the ground when we're trying to register people, people to vote, that they didn't even know that they could get their voting rights restored just for the simple fact that they had a felony conviction maybe 20, 30 years ago. Perfect example, came across a gentleman who was probably in his early 60s, made a mistake about 25 years ago. Now he has a 9-to-5 job. He's a deacon in his church. And the last municipal election, which resulted in electing Montgomery's first Black mayor, he wanted to be a part, but he didn't know how. So he just wanted to kind of volunteer to get the vote out. And then just out of conversation, it came out that he couldn't vote because of the felony conviction. And once we explained to him what the process was, thinking that he just had to fill out a serve application to get reinstated, he just simply needed to register to vote because he had a drug conviction. And right now, with the moral turpitude law, the only drug conviction where you have to go and get a serve application for to go through BPP is drug trafficking. So it's a lot of people who have just simple convictions, like drug convictions, that can just really just simply go register to vote, and they don't know that. And I want to say, when the moral turpitude law first hit in 2017, just here in Montgomery County, which has a population of about 200,000 people, had about 4,000 people who had felony convictions that were barred from voting. So just think about 4,000 people can easily shift any kind of election, making it even local, statewide, or even a presidential election for this area. So we're still trying to get that word out. We had an event at Carver High School on yesterday where we were giving out masks and sanitizers to the community, but we also had a system in place to register people and go through the application to get the voting rights restored. And there were actually about 4 people who began the process to get the voting rights restored just by coming by there. So the work is being done. It could be more. I wish we had more help on our state officials to help to get the word about, because voting shouldn't really be a privilege because it's a right, and no one should be restricted from that. So that's all I want to say right now.
Also, it's really important to remember you shouldn't lose a right that you were born with. And that's what we're kind of getting at. And that's kind of what the 2 young ladies kind of got at in arguing their affirmative. There was one young lady, I don't know if it was Maya or Michaela, but one of them was echoing that majority of the people in our prisons are not even violent offenders. And so when we're talking about when we're talking about restoration in particular and restorative programs, it's also a part of unlearning the idea of what we think the prison industrial complex is and the type of people that it houses. It houses a lot of our mentally ill people. And it also houses a lot of our people that have been convicted of nonviolent offenses, such as drug possession or things of that nature. And during the pandemic also as well, a lot of those people who are incarcerated actually can vote, which is another thing that we'll be able to talk about as well. And John Paul will highlight as well, in light of new cases that have, hit the court since 2017 and even this year in 2020.
Absolutely. Great knowledge, both of you all. And so when we talk about the 2017 law, simply the definition of moral turpitude act, when we say that means there are individuals who there are what the state of Alabama they did not define what moral turpitude means. They created a list of what's called disqualifying convictions, right? And there are 46 convictions that disqualify the person up front from being able to register to vote. And when I say up front, that means even if you have one of those disqualifying convictions, there still is a path to restoration, right? I think it is, and Kanisha, you said this, I think it is important to make sure people understand that there are no drug offenses that disqualifies a person except for trafficking. And that's important to note, because I think me and Jason can both attest to this, that a lot of people confuse the language. And so when we talk about a lot of this, the language is very important, because trafficking is a very specific, that's a very specific conviction. Meaning if it says anything other than trafficking is non-disqualifying. That means you can register to vote. Possession, distribution, those things are are not disqualifying for a person. So I think the language, we have to be able to make sure that we get the language right. As Martin said once upon a time, right? We let's get the language right. Um, there's ways to find this out. Alabama Voting Rights Project.com is still up and available. That means you can log into that and go through the steps to see if you are qualified to register to vote or not. So that's important, so people know where they can go. And kudos and props to people like Kanisha and Jason, who are definitely on the ground. And I think that's one of the things we have to highlight in this movement, is that the people on the ground are very significant, and the most significant in this process, right? Because they're going to be able to touch and reach people that and make them feel more secure in registering to vote, right? And making sure that they have the true knowledge and the fortitude to be able to push past. Because we all know a lot of people go, oh, I can't do it, I don't want to do it. And I think the people on the ground have the most knowledge to be able to help enlighten our people in doing that. But as we talk about that, there are some national movements that's happening, and some pushes forward in talking about this on a national scale and what that means for all of us, because there are 6.1 million individuals that are disenfranchised in voting right now because of a felony conviction. Philip, I would love for you to kind of speak to that and how we can, as a people, as a nation, can move forward in trying to make sure all of our voices are heard.
Sure, no, and I appreciate you all including me, and I just want to echo some of what was said before, but just really, shout out and commend Crystal and everyone else who put this together. There are a lot of people who pay lip service to supporting our youth and talk about how much they support them. It's another thing, though, to actually, follow that through with your work and action. And by doing this, you certainly are empowering our young people. And, as someone who did debate in high school, and, Maya and I I've shared this with her before, that, this is so much bigger than even just this one topic for you all, especially in the times we're living in, for you to be able to, put together your thoughts and feelings into, arguments and to putting together your points. It will bring you so far, and I'm excited and looking forward to seeing, you all continuing to lead the way. But as far as, just making sure that people's voices are included, one thing that we I think sometimes try to shame people into voting and say, you have to vote because it's important, or, people sacrifice for your right to vote. And, one thing I think that we as a country and especially, elected officials can do a little bit better of is giving people reason to want to vote, and really, not just saying the same things that are going to sound good in a campaign, but actually, speaking to people and reaching them on their level where they're at, and giving them reason and hope to want to go out and vote. With that said, though, of course, so we have to make it as easy and as accessible. And considering how low our turnout is in this country, it is baffling that our Secretary of State, and other elected officials try to make it as hard as possible. But one thing that we can do, and Jason and Kanisha, are examples of how to do this, is that, right, instead of just getting on social media and saying to people, hey, you should vote, it's important, or, don't waste your right to vote, is actually giving people the information and giving it to people in a very accessible way, where you let them know what the deadlines are to register, that people know what the deadline is to request an absentee ballot, that you share with people the link of how to fill that out, the application to get one. And that's something that, everything from elected officials to business leaders and community leaders to grassroots leaders to even just, everybody, just sharing that information, whether it's by text message with friends, whether it's by email, social media, just making the information as accessible for people. I think that can go a long way. And just the last point that I'll make, though, that, to just touch on what Kanisha said, that, there are so many people who just don't know whether or not they're eligible to vote based off of prior convictions, and, getting that information out there in a way that really breaks down as easily as possible, right, what the disqualifying convictions are, what the steps are, and getting that to people where they're at. We can, I think for those of us who are involved in politics, it's easy to sometimes kind of get caught up in that bubble and not realize that there are people who just are not, they're going about their day-to-day lives, not necessarily, sitting there tuning into every bit of information that's coming out about voting and current events. And what we can do a better job of is meeting them where they are, getting that information out to people at their jobs, if it's in housing developments, getting it, out that way, and really just bringing it to people as opposed to waiting on them or thinking that they're going to go and get all the information themselves.
Crystal, can I jump in there for a second?
Yes.
So first, I want to I was just about to say, okay, we got some good information, so what do we do with it? But Jason beat me to it. He dropped the link in the chat for the Alabama voting rights, and then Kanisha dropped some information in. And I think that's really what we need to be focused on, is kind of sharing this information like we share fight videos or we share drama on social media, right? We need to put this information out, and make voting sexy, like make it something that people want to do. And like, the word of mouth is so important. People will listen to you because they're your friends and family, not just, because there's information. No, they'll trust you. So if you share it, if you tell them, they'll take value in that. I know we're about to come to a close, but I just wanted to ask the panel, was there any immediate steps? We got about 30 people on the live right now, but throughout the whole thing, it's been over 100, and it's probably going to be shared a bunch more. Like, so people listening, is there anything quickly that the panel will want to say, hey, get involved with this, volunteer with this, this is coming up, anything you want to put out so people could like take this energy from today and immediately get involved with?
I'll go first. I'll be brief. If you're interested in joining the NAACP, the Metro Montgomery branch, we are partners with Rolling to the Polls, which is an initiative from Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, which Kanisha is going to talk about probably in a second. She needs volunteers. I was out there in the hot sun at Carver, and I really enjoyed myself yesterday. We helped a lot of people. Even people who came in late still got aid. There's a lot of really good work that we're doing. If you're interested in joining NAACP here, you can look up the NAACP's Facebook page. You can actually look it up on the @ name. It's the same as the IG name. It's @ Metro Metro MGM NAACP. That's @ Metro MGM NAACP. There is a Google form that's pinned at the top, and if you actually hit that Google form, you can submit your contact information, and we'll shoot you an email. We are going to be doing some more voter registration, voter education work here in the city, as well as we'll be partnering with Rolling to the Polls and doing more voter restoration work as well as the upcoming election gets here. The most important thing is when you vote, our mission is to make sure that as the NAACP, you know what you're voting for. You're not just voting for a name, you're voting for purpose. We have to put power back into our vote and learn how to activate that even at the local level. What happens at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is not going to hit your house faster than what happens in your school board, in your city council elections, in your county commission elections, in your state house elections, and as well as with the census as well. If you haven't done it, make sure that you do it. That's all I got, Kanisha.
And I want to add that I know everybody is, paying attention to the national news and watching what's currently going on in the White House, and we're kind of central focused on the November election, which is also important. But I also want to tell the Montgomery area that we also have an election coming up on July 14th, and that is going to be the Alabama primary runoff election that was rescheduled from March 31st due to COVID-19. The last day to register to vote for that election is tomorrow, June 29th. If you are hesitant about physically going to vote due to COVID-19, you can still go and apply for an absentee ballot application. Get your absentee ballot application, and you have 11 days to do that. Just make sure that you know, back in August of last year, the law has changed to where you have to provide ID along with your absentee application. But if you want to keep abreast on voting information, please make sure you like our social media page, Rolling to the Polls Voting Initiative. We have information on there where you can text to find out if you're registered to vote, if you're registered to vote at your current address, and if you're considered still an active voter, because there have been cases where people have been put off the voter rolls due to inactivity or a simple mistake. So we can't go into any election blindly. We have to make sure we cover all bases and be educated. And I know that it is a critical time and we want to make sure everyone is voting, but I just hope everyone knows this: as you're encouraging people to vote, don't vote or shame, and don't be condescending to talk to people about voting. We sometimes make a mistake of talking to people and not talking with them. So just make sure that you kind of reason with them and understand why they have been hesitating about voting, and don't, speak mean to them or talk down to them. Just welcome to the party and tell them to keep moving to go vote into November and also July 14th. And that's all I had.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. And Kanisha, if you don't mind, let us know when you're doing some things. We have 5 schools that's a part of Destiny Driven. So I definitely want to get our kids out there, not only letting their voice be heard, but also getting into community. We want to be in the hot sun with you. So let us know what you have going on so I can get my kids out there, because it's awesome what you're doing.
I'm gonna hold you to that. As we think about this hot sun, I'm gonna hold you to that. And speaking of the youth, let me add this as well for those that are eager to vote and wanting to vote ahead of the election. If you're going to turn 18 before the election date, let's say you want to register on Tuesday, today, and you turn 18 by July 14th, you could go ahead and register, and they'll go ahead and just backlog you in and make sure that you're registered to vote by the time you turn 18. So if you're about to turn 18 ahead of an election date, you can go ahead and register. And if you want to register online, you can go to alabamavotes.gov, or you can text vote 334 to 31996.
Awesome. And also, I forgot to mention this earlier because I don't know if Mr. Lovejoy is on the live or if he's on the Zoom, but I did want to thank him and thank the Lions Club for supporting Destiny Driven, and thank you for your donation. It's definitely going to go to you. So if you're on the live, thank you very much for your donation. And we're going to continue to bring you information.
I don't know how much the donation was. Give them some love.
The donation was for $1,500, and that's Mr. Lovejoy and his partner. And thank you very much. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your support for these kids, and we want to continue to give you to pour into the kids, because I think they did an awesome job, and they're going to keep on working. So thank you for helping us. And without any further ado, we're going to hear we talked about voting, we talked about voter suppression, voter restoration, and like Kanisha said, we have some local elections that's coming up, and it's very important. We have one student that did not, he wasn't able to come to the live because he just got a full scholarship to Morehouse. So he's in Morehouse right now for the tour, but he did have a message for you all to register to vote. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank the ladies, thank the panelists, thank the parents, the teachers, the friends, everybody on live. we're going to keep doing this. So join us next month. We're going to be talking about defunding the police. Should we? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Let's debate. I'll see you all next month. And we're going to go ahead and hear the PSA from Alon Gibson.
Greetings, my name is Alon Gibson. I attend Booker T. Washington Magnet High School. I hope that you are staying safe during this time of quarantine and that you continue to wash your hands and stay 6 feet apart until the CDC says it's okay to return back to normal. But while you're doing that, I want to encourage you to do one thing for me: register to vote. We have an important election coming up in November, and it is very, very important that you are registered and that you are able to vote in this election. Many, many things are on the line, and we must ensure that we have a future filled with opportunities. It only takes you 2 to 3 minutes to register to vote. So do me a favor and register to vote if you're not registered already. Again, please stay safe during this pandemic. My thoughts and my prayers are with everyone, and we will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you all. I forgot we got one more giveaway, and this is going to go to Miss Rochelle. So Miss Rochelle, if you can, go ahead and give us your Cash App. You can even put it down below or message us. And thank everyone, and we'll see you all next month. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you guys. Bye everyone.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
Great job, young ladies.
Thank you.